Here's some philosophy for you guys. So I am of the philosophy and of the mind that language is not arbitrary. The words have definite meaning. They do not change with time. There isn't a dictionary update that you can put out that will update the meaning of a word. The word has a meaning since its inception. It always carries that meaning, and the meaning changes if you should change the word. Now, the difference between my position and most modern linguists and other individuals who are involved in academic pursuits of language, my position is falsifiable. That is to say that my position is one that can be tested and proven to be true or false. Because it is that a vast majority of people throughout history have considered language to be an unfalsifiable phenomena. That means that most people's understanding of language are unfalsifiable positions, which means that they cannot be proven wrong, but they also cannot be proven right. And if I should provide a falsifiable position on language, one that can be proven to be accurate with data or proven to be inaccurate with data, should my falsifiable position be accurate, it would prove that it is correct, and the unfalsifiable position would be incorrect forever. It would be wrong. Just wholesale. It would be full stop wrong. In simple terms, an unfalsifiable claim is one that you can't really prove or disprove, which may or may not be within the realm of plausibility. It's not really provable or disprovable, such as saying that there's a teacup orbiting the moon. Could be that somebody put a teacup in orbit around the moon. Nobody really knows. I can't say that it's not possible, but it's also not likely. And to say that your argument is just as valid as me saying that the moon orbits the earth is not the same. It doesn't have the same strength. My claim is falsifiable. We can look in the sky and see if the moon is fucking orbiting the earth. And you could say that the teacup is orbiting the moon, and it's equally valid to say that. But I have evidence that the moon is orbiting the earth. Even if you think the earth is flat or whatever, it's still, there's more evidence that the moon is fucking going than it is that there's a teacup that I've never seen orbiting the moon. Is it just as likely if somebody put a teacup in orbit around the moon, then sure, it's possible, but I don't think that's ever happened. If somebody showed me a picture, I would believe it, because it's not that crazy to think a teacup orbiting. But your argument, so long as it's unfalsifiable, I can't prove it true or false, it doesn't have that much strength. And so a vast majority of the human population throughout history has held an unfalsifiable position on the nature of language. And if that position is challenged by another position that is falsifiable, and not only that, but has demonstrative, observable evidence to its affirmative, to the support of its hypothesis, then your position that is unfalsifiable is fucking dog shit. A vast majority of humans throughout history have been operating from the presupposition that there is a teacup orbiting the moon. They take that as fucking fact. And everything that transpires about the study of language from that position, if it should be proven that there's not only not a teacup orbiting the moon, but in the place of a teacup, there's a 747 going in the opposite direction, then you have a position that is fucking horseshit. And the things that you think you've discovered, you haven't. Because they're based off a thing that doesn't exist, right? And not only does it not exist, but the opposite, something that is conflicting, is the case. It's a 747 orbiting the moon, which I have the trajectory of. You can fucking... And so your conclusions about language, who give a fuck? My conclusions are based off of reality. And so, academically speaking, it shouldn't even be a matter of debate. I should be able to provide the evidence to academia, and it should be like, oh fuck, we don't know fucking anything about language. And that should be it. They can begin to study language in earnest, for real for once. But because people live in the world that we do, I am not given the platform to present the data to demonstrably show, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that it is the case that language is not arbitrary. And because we live in this world, and it's something that is so easily demonstrated, that should give you all the evidence you need to know about the condition you find yourself in the world. Now, because of the world we live in, you might also be aware that the only real hope I have of reaching these academic institutions and changing the world is if I'm giving a platform by which I can have my voice amplified enough for them to hear me, and thereby challenge my position, or have their position challenged. Now, the onus of responsibility in the hands of the observer is largely the problem, because you observing this and having to decide whether or not to give me a platform to boost my voice is really a difficult position to put you in. Because if you're not a member of the academic pursuit that's being challenged, the status quo, or in my shoes, you're not me, you don't actually have the truth of it, then you don't have a real understanding in either capacity to determine whether or not I have anything that's challenging whatsoever. I might be delusional. And so, how do you really know whether or not to support me? Well, you don't. But you are never expected to know whether or not you should support me. Because in the system you live in right now, you aren't looking to support somebody based on their academic credential, based on the validity of their argument. You're only supporting individuals who you think that will provide the best spectacle to you, which is why you shouldn't be allowed to have an opinion whatsoever. Now, a name that springs to mind is Terrence Howard. He was fucked from the beginning, no matter what he did. Because it is that he had already earned a platform as an actor, as a spectacle, as entertainment. And so people were willing to give him further platform under the pretense of academia, but for the real purpose of spectacle. Because people already had an opinion that he was a crazy person, and he was either going to uproot the status quo, disprove academia, thereby making crazy seem not crazy, dunking on academia, and thereby diminishing academia, causing a spectacle of academia, or it was that he would be proven to be crazy, wrong, thereby creating further spectacle of himself. And so they were willing to give him a platform. But that platform fucks him from the beginning, because academia, as a zeitgeist, has no interest whatsoever. It can only lose. It cannot benefit from sharing a platform in the sense of spectacle. Because academia doesn't want to be seen as spectacle. It is not spectacle. It is trying to be seen as serious, as true, as legitimate. That is the nature of that identity. If you're an academic, you understand what's going on. You're not a joke. It's not a fucking theater. It's what's real. And because Terrence Howard is being propped up for spectacle's purpose, if academia should succeed or fail, it is for the purpose of spectacle, which makes academia look like a joke. And because it only disadvantages academia to be made spectacle, it has done everything in its power to decenter itself, to remove itself from that platform in all possible ways. And so Terrence Howard never actually gets to engage academia. Even if they had information that was true and accurate and falsifiable, academia would reject it from the outset because it is for spectacle's purpose and it could not serve to better either party in any capacity. Instead, academia allows its white knights to champion its cause for it, right? There is no defining qualities that makes you an academic. It's all this nebulous, and it's not, you can't nail it down, because it is that academia doesn't want to be centered. It doesn't want to be put on a platform. It doesn't want to be held accountable. There cannot be a representative of academia to speak for academia. Otherwise, academia would be put on platforms where it would be considered a spectacle. And so that would be to the detriment of academia. So it allows people who are adjacent to academia, who have an identity that connects them to the seriousness of academia, that have a dog in the fight defending academia. But if they should lose an argument with Terrence Howard, academia will cut them loose and be like, he's not an academic, he's just a whatever, he's just a dude. Now you might be sort of familiar with this phenomena in your daily life in other capacities, like with things like white supremacy. Because there are endless white knights to champion the cause of white supremacy. But should some other position that challenges the notion of white supremacy rise up and disprove the individual by saying, well, you're this, that, and the other thing, you can't be supreme, you can't be better than, then the notion of white supremacy can disavow that individual as not being representative of white supremacy. They're not white, they're a quarter Italian, and that will go on forever, because white supremacy isn't fucking real, because whiteness isn't real. And because whiteness isn't real, and even if it were real, white supremacy has no evidence supporting it, that means the individuals championing the cause of white supremacy are championing the delusion, the ideation, their identification with this notion that it's just them and not representative of a whole. And so if you're trying to debate every single one of these fucking idiots, you're not doing anything to fight white supremacy. Because just like academia, white supremacy has done everything in its power to avoid being put on the stage of spectacle. It does not want to be called to accountability because it doesn't actually have any real representation. There's no concrete values that make you white supremacists. It's just this nebulous concept that doesn't actually have any foundation in reality. But there's people that believe it's a real thing, which then precludes people like Terrence Howard from having a fucking stage to challenge the status quo, because the status quo doesn't exist. But there are people that benefit from the notion that it does exist, who benefit from being considered academic, who are smarter, who can who belittle people like Terrence Howard. There are people that benefit from that, who will not give it up. They'll never give it up because of the delusion, and because they benefit from the delusion that other people play into. Now, the conclusion to this brief philosophy suggests that you as the observer should have no power whatsoever to determine who it is that should be platformed and who it is that should not be platformed. It should not be on you to determine who it is that has a valid perspective that might challenge the status quo, because not only are you ignorant of that perspective that's challenging the status quo, but you're fucking ignorant of the status quo. And you've deluded yourself in believing that the dopamine hit you get from the spectacle that will unfold is akin to you being able to determine what is actually valid and what is not. This is why so commonly people give Nazis a platform under the pretense of free speech. It's not free speech. They're not saying anything. You're just oblivious to that because you also believe in the lie of white supremacy. You're a Nazi. Philosophy, round 2. If you watched the previous video on philosophy, I went over what is an unfalsifiable claim. And if you need a refresher, an unfalsifiable claim is a claim that cannot be disproven and it also cannot be proven. As an example, saying that Jesus loves you forever is an unfalsifiable claim because there's no way that we could actually prove that Jesus actually loves you, and there's no way that we could disprove that Jesus loves you. And it need not have a supernatural component to be unfalsifiable. You could say that your partner loves you more than anybody loves anybody in the whole world, and that would be an unfalsifiable claim because we do not have a metric by which we can measure love to determine whether or not your partner loves you more than any other person loves anybody else. And we also do not have the ability to test every single person and every single connection they have with every other human being to determine whether or not your partner specifically loves you more than any other person loves anybody else in the whole world. And if you're real clever, real smart, you might be able to notice a pattern emerging. If not, let me point it out to you. Arguing from a position of an unfalsifiable claim is, in absolute totality, an exercise of total fucking futility and stupidity. Because even if you were to prove that your partner loved you more than, it would make absolutely no fucking difference to any entity in all of existence. Because it is that it's unfalsifiable, that means there isn't a metric which we might participate in experiencing to come to the determination that you have. And because there is no metric that we can participate in, that means it's just about you and your partner. And because you're already experiencing it, good for fucking you, bitch. Shut the fuck up. Nobody cares. They couldn't possibly care. Why would anybody give a fuck? Because your claim is unfalsifiable, then you being willing to die on that hill over it is fucking weird. Because it is that no other individual in all of existence can share in the experience that you're having. And so, trying to prove or convince the world that it is the case is an exercise in complete and utter idiocy and insanity. Which is why so many of you claim to have a personal relationship with Jesus. Because if you were to have a public relationship with Jesus, we might have some fucking falsifiable data to judge whether or not the veracity of your claim holds any water. But because you have a personal relationship with Jesus, that would be an unfalsifiable claim. Because I don't have that relationship, so I guess gotta take your word at it, don't I? That he's the bestest. But because I'm unable to have that experience, then telling me about it is just you being a piece of shit. And you stamping your feet about it and throwing a hissy fit is fucking weird. Shut the fuck up. Nobody cares about your personal relationship with your spooky boogeyman. Because no other person can have an actionable relationship with their personal spooky boogeyman that they get. You don't have a sequence by which they can follow to obtain that data. Because you don't have shit. This is why there are religions in the world that have falsifiable experiences that you may have, such as Buddhism, Hinduism, and perhaps in some capacity Christianity, but not in the way that a vast, vast majority of Christians think that you obtain that information. You do not obtain it that way. You are lost as fuck. You are up your own fucking ass. You have no clarity. You are only interested in lies. Your daddy. Okay? And because that is the case, then you needs must understand that democracy is vile, abhorrent, and is the worst fucking governance system that you can imagine. Because it is that your understanding of democracy goes as such. You, an individual citizen of this country, are afforded the right to vote in any election that should emerge as it relates to your place of residence. Should it be your city? Should it be your county? Should it be your state? Should it be your country? You can vote in any election as it pertains to you and the place of your residence. So that is, if there's an election in your county, but the people in the next county, they aren't holding an election, you can vote in your county election. Your neighbors can't in a different county. Only you can, because it relates to you and your county. Those are your representatives for your county. And so you can vote in the state election, and your neighbors in the next county can vote in that. But they can't vote in your county elections. That makes sense? In the place of your residency. And during the election process, you can place a vote towards any office, any individual that you wish to be the representative for that position of office that you so desire. That is to say, there are 10 offices that are up for election. The vote is to see who's going to fill these 10 offices. But there are 500 people running for office. You can place 10 votes, one for each office, towards the individual you wish to be a representative, okay? And your vote is co-equal with any other vote in all of the nation. That is to say, the president's vote, my vote, your vote, all equally the same weight as it applies to people in our election as it applies to our place of residency, okay? So if you vote for MKJ and I vote for MKL, in the same exact election, because we live in the same county and city, and I vote one way and you vote another, our votes, they go to our candidates, and fundamentally, they cancel each other out, or they oppose each other. All right? You still vote for the person that you want to. I'll vote for who I want to. And the majority, whoever has the majority, their candidate becomes the elected official for that office. That's how you understand your democracy, right? Now, that's all well and good. That system seems to work fine. However, a slight issue emerges where it becomes depravity, and that is when you introduce the concept of voters being real people. Because real people are stupid as fuck, and they don't give a fuck about anything. They only want the spectacle of it. They don't care about democracy in any capacity. You can be sure of that because it is the moment you've chosen a team, blue or red, you have disavowed your aspirations of democracy in entirety. And what you've done is you sold it down the river for what you consider to be the lesser of two evils. You don't give a fuck about democracy in any capacity. You don't give a fuck about it, okay? Because it is the case that a vast, vast majority of the voting population have no idea who it is that they're voting into office, what the office's responsibilities are, what powers it has, what authority it has, people don't know what any of these offices, positions, what their job is. If you wish to challenge me, I welcome you. Tell me what the positions that you elect on your state ballot do. What positions of authority, what do they have in terms of authority, what it is that they can do, what is it they can't. Tell me. And then tell me how it is that you've determined who is a representative to fill that office sufficiently. Now, you might argue with me and say it's my opinion, but it's not my opinion. Because what I have is what you would call a falsifiable motherfucking claim. And you can go on the Google machine and you can type in how many people turned out for your state's presidential election. How many people in your state turned out to vote for the president? Then type into Google machine how many people turned out to vote in your state's state elections. And tell me what the larger number is. Because I am very confident that a vast majority will report to me that the larger voter turnout was for the president. Because it is a vast majority of the people in this country think that the president is the more important election. But were you aware that the president has almost no fucking power whatsoever? And in fact, they have the least amount of impact of any position in the entire fucking government over your day-to-day lived life. Were you aware of that? A president has, really, the federal government has authority over a few things. The money, the shared currency that we have, taxes, because that's something that we all contribute to the support of the federal government and the military, foreign trade, and because of a loophole, immigration. That's what the president has authority over, which is why the president is only ever talking about those things. Oh, one other thing. They are commander-in-chief in time of war, because the federal government exists in entirety for the purpose of defense. In entirety. Which is why the defense budget is so high. Because that's the only reason they exist, is for the purpose of fucking defense. Because if you were not aware, we are 50 sovereign states. Which means that we're not one country, we're 50 states. Which means there are 50 fucking countries. Just like there is a state of Germany, and a state of Palestine, and a state of fucking UK. They are states. A nation, which you are probably unawares of, is not a state. A nation is a shared language, a shared culture that kind of unites us. We're under the banner of the United States because we all kind of have the same values, right? We're all different states though. And because that is the case, no matter how much your fucking belly aches about the fucking Roe v. Wade, if you think the president has anything to do with that, you are a dumb piece of shit. If Texas determines that it is illegal to get an abortion in Texas, that is their sovereign fucking right. And if you don't like it, move out of Texas. And because it is that one state doesn't have it as a legal thing that you can do, the federal government cannot implement it as a law because it's not something that all of the states agree to. So the federal government cannot enforce it. Which is why the federal government cannot make weed legal, because some states have made it illegal. Because the federal government follows the leaders, which are the 50 fucking states. And if 49 states, for all of eternity, have made abortion legal, but one holds out, the federal government will never make it federally legal, because it cannot. Which is why the federal minimum wage is so low, because state minimum wages are low, and it cannot be higher than the state's minimum wage, you dumb fucks. Which is why it's a district of Columbia, it's not a state. It is where we all convene as sovereign states to come to the determination in terms of war, in terms of currency, etc. And the president is the one who sets the precedent, who is the mouthpiece for the entirety of the nation, not the states. And so you can't lie to me. Not a single one of you has ever given a fuck about democracy. You only give a fuck about having an opinion. And your perverse need for a fucking opinion is why everything in your existence is unfalsifiable. But you can't uproot me, because I'm a real druid. A druid!